Hi, my name's Ron Pinkerton. I work for Sun Learning Services where I'm Master Instructor for Java CAPS, or more formally, the Sun Java Composite Application Platform Suite. This is the first in a series of modules to help get you acquainted with Sun Java CAPS. These first few modules, including this one, actually deal with some background technology, not the product itself, and introduce some vocabulary and concepts we use when we talk about the product. If you're already familiar with terms like composite applications, WSDL, BPEL, and so on, I'd encourage you to go ahead and skip these first couple of modules, step right into the eGate Integrator overview module where we actually start talking about the product and what it does. For those of you who are new to some of these terms, let's go ahead and get started. We'll talk about composite applications first. Dictionary.com defines the word composite as being made up of disparate or separate parts or elements. That's a pretty good description of a composite application. Composite app appears to be a single application, but behind the scenes, it's drawing its functionality and data from other disparate or separate applications. Our goal in building a composite application is to leverage our existing enterprise applications and the data that's dispersed throughout them, to bring them together as a whole, presumably to automate some business process or achieve some business goal. The challenge in doing that, though, is to try to get access to those discrete pieces of functionality and data that may be dispersed across our organization or even outside it. We're going to accomplish that with something that we're going to refer to as a service. Now, for our conversation, we'll define a service as a module of code that provides some relatively narrowly focused functionality. A service can be written from scratch, or it may integrate with our existing applications. It may go in and trigger some piece of their functionality, or it may update and retrieve some piece of their data. Just an aside, there's plenty of technical definitions that make a distinction between services and web services, but for our purposes, we're going to use those two terms interchangeably. So let's go ahead and talk a little more about services, or web services, if you will. We've already defined a service as a module of code that provides some relatively narrowly focused functionality. It's designed to be called by another application, not intended to be directly used by a human being or an end user. If you take a look at the screen, we see on the right a yellow box that represents our calling application, that is the application that will invoke the web service. The green box representing that service itself. The arrows that we see running between them imply an exchange of data between them. And the terms input and output suggest that that exchange takes the form of messages. That is, the calling application will send in a message to the web service, maybe passing data to act upon or parameters for it to apply. Maybe just the fact it receives a message triggers its behavior. Okay. Our service, though, is intended to do something useful. The calling application doesn't know or care how that gets done. Okay. Calling application is shielded from all the details of that service, of the execution of that service logic. So then after a service does something useful, whether it's self-contained or interacting behind the scenes, it's typically, though it doesn't have to, but typically going to produce some kind of output in the form of another message, and that's going to be passed back to the calling application with some sort of outcome, maybe modified data, additional data. We don't know at this point. It can be a lot of things. But this idea then, this web service does some narrowly focused thing at the behest of a calling application. Now, there's a couple of issues we need to address to make this work, and the first of these is making sure that the calling application knows about the services, that it knows that they exist, what kind of trigger or input is required, and what to expect back. So we deal with that issue with something known as a WSDL document. There's that element now between the web service and calling application on our diagram. WSDL is an acronym for Web Service Description Language. The WSDL document is the means by which our calling application is going to know about this service. It's going to know it's available. It's going to know what it does. It's going to know how to find it or where to find it, maybe a URL, for instance. Okay? It's going to know that it expects input in a given form and that it produces output in another form. So in short, the WSDL are the rules of engagement for our web service. So that concludes our first little module. I thank you for your time and attention. The next module in this sequence is going to deal with business processes, service orchestration, and BPEL. Hope to see you then. Hope to see you there. I assume you're on these modules or looking at these modules because you're interested in Java CAPS. If you'd like to cut to the chase and take a look at some of our instructor-led training offerings, see what they can provide you, There's a URL on your screen now that will tell you more about the course content in our catalog, and at that same location you can register for public courses. There's also an email address on screen. You can write to Terry to discover how to bring training to your location. So let me leave you with a little pop quiz here. Check our vocabulary understanding of what we've talked about so far. See you soon. Thanks.